The snow fell gently across the wide Montana plains, each flake catching the light of a fading sun that cast a golden glow over the frozen valley. The wind carried a sharp bite, swirling the powder in soft spirals across the ground. And somewhere in that wintry silence, the crunch of heavy boots broke the stillness. Sarah, her breath puffing in quick white clouds, staggered forward with an armful of firewood pressed against her chest. Her silver hair whipped loose around her face, her scarf pulled tight around her shoulders. But the burden of the logs weighed her down more with every step. She had lived alone since her husband passed years before, and though she had learned to shoulder the work, today the cold seemed harsher, the wood heavier, and her spirit more fragile. Just as her knees buckled slightly in the snow, a voice cut through the silence, steady, deep, carrying both strength and warmth. "Ma'am, let me take that for you." She turned and saw him, a tall cowboy, broad-shouldered, his hat dusted with snow, his leather vest worn from years of labor, his plaid shirt stretched across a chest that bore the weather of 1,000 storms. His gloved hand reached toward her burden, but his eyes, steady hazel, framed by lines of hard work and kindness, met hers with an honesty she hadn't felt in years. For a moment pride told her to refuse. She had carried burdens all her life. She knew what it meant to fight through the ache, but her arms trembled, her breath caught, and the kindness in his gaze disarmed her defenses. Slowly, almost reluctantly, she let him take the wood, and the sudden release nearly brought her to tears. He balanced the logs with ease, as if they weighed nothing, and fell into step beside her. "Name's Jacob," he said simply, his voice rumbling like distant thunder, yet soft enough to settle into her heart. Sarah nodded, unable to speak at first, overwhelmed by how a stranger's presence could feel like both strength and shelter. As they walked toward her small cabin, tucked against the pines, the silence between them filled not with awkwardness, but with something deeper, something unspoken. Jacob noticed her hands, red from the cold, cracked from the labor, and he thought of his mother, who had carried the same quiet strength before she passed. Something in Sarah's resilience struck him hard, like a memory he didn't know he still carried. When they reached the cabin, he set the firewood down gently by the door, not tossing it but placing it with care, as if it were more than just wood, but a lifeline for her survival. Sarah thanked him, her voice low and trembling, but Jacob didn't turn to leave. Instead, he looked at her with a steady conviction. "You've been carrying too much alone," he said. "Sometimes the hardest thing is letting someone else help." She froze, the truth of his words sinking into her chest like warmth from a fire. For years, she had borne the silence of loneliness, telling herself she was strong enough, that asking for help was weakness, that time would dull the ache of being alone. But in that moment, with the snow falling softly around them and this stranger's sincerity wrapping her like another blanket, she realized how desperately she longed for someone to share the burden, not just of firewood, but of life itself. Jacob tipped his hat and offered a small smile. "If you'll let me, I'd like to come by now and then. Make sure the woodpile stays full. Maybe even share a cup of coffee." It was simple, unassuming. Yet in his words lived the promise of something more: companionship, laughter, maybe even love. Sarah felt a crack in the wall she had built around her heart, a warmth that spread through her veins, stronger than any fire could provide. She nodded, tears filling her eyes, but her lips curving into the first real smile she had felt in years. That winter night, as Jacob walked away and promised to return, she stood at her cabin door, watching him disappear into the snow. The weight of loneliness no longer crushed her, for in that brief encounter, he had not only taken her burden of firewood, but also shared a piece of his heart. And for the first time in years, Sarah felt hope blooming inside her like springtime hidden beneath the snow. And as this story reminds us, sometimes the heaviest loads we carry are not just logs of wood, but the silent struggles of the soul. And when someone steps into our lives with kindness and courage, everything changes. If you were moved by this chapter and want to see more heartfelt stories of resilience, kindness, and unexpected love, make sure to subscribe to the channel right now. Your support helps keep these stories alive, and together We can continue to share tales that warm hearts even on the coldest days.